So, so one of the things that we want to do today is we want to help dismantle and disarm conflict. So oftentimes when people get in the middle of a conflict, all of a sudden they're like, they feel like they're in a fight. But if we can just take a step back and take a look at the anatomy of a conflict, because conflict doesn't happen willy-nilly. There's always some kind of causation. And sometimes it's the other person, and sometimes it's me, and I'm here, and I'm a problem. And so this is something that we want to dismantle and take apart a little bit.
And before we get into that, when we think about generative conflict, a lot of people don't believe us that conflict can be good. But I would actually take that one more step and say that when your team or your family or your partner or your best friend and you never have any conflict, it actually can cause as much harm as having only conflict.
Right.
Because it generally means someone is disengaging. And if someone is never saying their piece, they're on their way out of something, right? Or they've resigned to the fact that their opinion and their thoughts don't matter.
Whatever.
And so if you're in a meeting and you feel like nobody cares what I think, and so you're not jumping into conflict because why would you bother? That's harmful for a company as much as a person who's like, I'm bored in this meeting, I'm gonna blow it up, which does happen quite often, okay? So we know from a ton of research that conflict is very important for innovation, it's very important for good strategy, it's very important for ideation. If one person with a big personality says, I think we have to do it this way, nobody wants to say anything to that person because we are conflict averse and we want the appearance of harmony, then what happens is people leave that meeting. The person that is like pounding their fist, they think everybody agrees with me. I did so great. And then we come over to our friend and we say, Gabby, he is so full of it. That is never going to work, right? Have you done this? Have you heard this?
The meeting after the meeting.
So everybody, there's like a whole bunch of people in the room that know there's 10 problems with that plan, but they're not saying it. But if they had said it, it might save $1 million. If they had said it, it might change like backlash over a poorly worded message. If they had said it, we might have landed on a better strategy that would have needed me to speak so that you would speak and then you would go, no, what if we combine those ideas? And we would get to the innovation. But innovation doesn't come when people aren't willing to step into conflict. The problem is that we don't have great tools for conflict. And what happens is as soon as we go into conflict, people feel disrespected. We think if you disagree with me, that's the same as disrespecting me. And that will kill engagement in a company. It will kill creativity. It will kill innovation. It will kill your strategies. We need to be able to disagree with each other in a way where we still feel like we can respect and honor each other and where we're all on the same team. So when I'm engaging in strategic mediation, not personality, but like people disagree about the strategy, one of the things I often say is if either of you win, then the company loses. The goal here is not for a person to win. The goal here is to come up with the best strategy. So we need to get on the same team. We need to push this back and forth in a more respectful way until we come up with something really good. And when we can do that, the results are really good. So that's why we get excited about this kind of conversation.
Yeah. Also, on another side note, Kimberly and I will be married 23 years this June. We know a few things about conflict. Thank you very much. And so
we've had some.
A few things, right?
We've also generated a few things in our marriage, so.
Like a child and a business and a publishing company and
I think you went a little sideways with that child one, but
so
that did not come out of conflict.
Yeah. So let's dismantle and take a different look at conflict, because really when we break it down, there's really only two kinds of conflict.
So we're going to give you 2 tools so that when you walk out of here, you could use this in your next conflict. And this is the first tool.
So the first thing you want to do when we encounter conflict is determine what kind of conflict are we experiencing. Now, by the way, people like to argue with me about this all the time. Like, oh, but wait, but there's this kind of conflict, this kind of conflict. And they go on through a list, and I'm like, yes, well, that's one of those too. We can bust it all down to these 2 things. It's either you're going after the same target or you're not. This is a pretty binary pretty binary stance. And a lot of people are like, but what about? Typically speaking, if you're going after one target and the other person's going after another target, that's a conflict because you're not shooting at the same thing. So yeah, our communication is going to be fuzzled by the multiple targets that we're experiencing. And the second kind of a conflict is an approach. Approach conflict happens when we're going after the same thing, but we're looking at it from different angles.
Now, personality conflicts tend to fall into approach, although your personality can affect what you think the target should be. So occasionally personality affects target, but it's almost always approach. So for example, I am really a highly relational person, and I really spend a lot of energy in connecting to my team. Sometimes I've worked on teams where another person feels like that is a waste of time. So we're both trying to do the same thing, but that person thinks task, 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 and I think person, person, person. And both of us are actually right in a way, right? So when I work well with someone like that, when we have a lot of respect, that person will pull me towards the tasks, but I will pull him towards the people, because if you run over your people all the time, they will not work hard for you. It's just like, it's evidenced in every employee engagement survey that ever was. And so how you treat your people does in fact matter, even if you really like tasks. But together, we're gonna have a lot more intelligence as a team, because we're gonna kind of watch each other's six a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Another aspect of this is that sometimes in the conflict, there are oftentimes both kinds. So in a conflict, what we might call an episode, if you will, in a conflict episode, we might have both target and approach conflicts happening at the same time inside of the same episode. And in a mediation session, or just in a conversation, sometimes what we're doing is we're trying to pull the threads of the knot that we found ourselves in. And sometimes it's very delicate, and sometimes it uncovers issues that we didn't even know existed when the conflict started.
And what most people will do is they will pull all the threads at the same time. Have you ever tried to untangle a knot of necklaces? It's probably more for the women. If you pull all the threads, it just gets tighter, we're just locked in, right? So you really have to pull a thread at a time, which is something that in mediation, a lot of what I do is keep us on a topic, because when people start to feel like they're losing, what do? They pull a different thread. They're like, yeah, well, you're a jerk. So now we're on a whole different topic, right? And so what you have to do is stick with your thing. But if you're dealing with target and approach, like we're not going after the same thing and you're being a jerk, then the first thing you do, which one do you think should come first? Target.